Super. So I think that's my signal to pick up and kick us off a little bit further down the road on this eighth session of these occasional webinars that we've been running since the tail end of last year. And as Misha said, we've been playing with the timing and also the recording so that others can take a look at what's up there in the series that we've done before. We take kind of a big tent and a little tent approach both ways. The little tent is just circling up as society colleagues to share some secrets and hard knock stories of what we've learned, best practices, but then also to make it a bigger tent experience and look for other organizations that we can link up with a little bit more closely, make common cause with, start campaigns together. So we did something on the U.S.-Japan Travel and Tourism Year. We reached out to Sister Cities International that way. We found another entity that can support the membership dues of our individual members. And in one of the neater connections, we found that our friends today, the North American Japanese Gardens Association, picked up on that relationship. So I think you folks are working on that. And that's the way we'd like to use this NAJAS Share, sharing best practices internally and some good ideas and connections externally. So number 8 is not really an introduction because I know these two groups, the societies and the gardeners, have been connected for decades and decades locally, and maybe a little bit less on the national level. So this is a chance to see how we can find some new ways to connect together. This is also a bit of a warm up for our big event of the year, taking place the 3rd week of August in Portland, courtesy of Graham Morris and Jazzo. We'll be hosting our 2.5-day annual meeting there in Portland. And one of the key features is going to be our first evening up at the gorgeous Portland Japanese Garden. And we'll have a chance to enjoy the garden and also talk gardens and society connections and just have a wonderful evening together in Portland in the midst of our meeting. We're a nice sized group today. I'm very happy to see so many colleagues here, but we're not so big that we can't do some introductions. And maybe we can do that individually. But maybe a little bit of formality. I just like to mention the 3 colleagues who are joining us from the NAJGA. And that would be Dr. Kendall or Ken Brown, who's a professor of Asian art history at Cal State Long Beach. And he's got a ton of publications out on both the art field and Japanese style gardens in North America. And you can read the bios of both Ken and Jeanette on our flyer. And Ken happens to be one of 2 founders that we've got. I don't know how many founders NAJGA had, but both Ken and Jeanette were there at the creation. How many founders did you folks have?
30. So no, we had 3.
Okay, all righty. We're 66% of the way there with Jeanette Schelin joining us as well. She managed the Earl Burns Miller Japanese Garden at the very same Cal State University Long Beach for a number of decades before retiring to have more time to throw herself into a bunch of boards and community activities and task forces. And one connection that I'd mention is that she's very active running the Long Beach Yokkaichi Sister City relationship. And then Marisa Rodriguez was really the the linchpin to getting us connected. Marissa reached out to me early on. I was so grateful when we had a conversation just on the cusp of your annual meeting in Texas. Marissa is the current manager of NAJGA. So the three will have a chance to introduce themselves a little bit further. But first, I wanted to turn to my colleague who started us off. I think this is the third NAJAS share that Misha's already joined. But please, Misha, if you want to, you haven't met everybody in our community yet, so please say a few more words.
Hi, I'm Misha. My pronouns are they, them. I'm the Operations and Communications Manager here at NAJAS. I've been on board since March and just loving being connected to our whole community here. I have an East Asian Studies background and benefited greatly from our local society in DC. So I love and respect and care very much about what all of you do. I'm very happy to be here to help support you.
Thanks, Misha. One more special intro I wanted to do because it really personifies the bridging function that NAJAS gets to pull off now and again. And that is our dear alum, known, I think, to many on the screens, Kim Andrews. Kim also has had formative roles in both organizations. I learned in a chat earlier today that she was both treasurer and president of NAJGA in the past. You will know about a 5-6 year stint running Shofasol, and then about an equal amount of time running the then merged JAS Greater Philly society before Teune-san came back out of retirement to take on that role again. So Kim, we're delighted that on very short notice you could join us.
I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so happy. I know just about everybody on the call. It's great to see anybody I haven't seen in a long time. So glad to see you all.
Thanks, Kim. And then why don't we go around the Zoom room and please, everybody, just say hi and introduce yourself so that all our garden friends know who's represented and how much of the U.S. we're covering. Please, in any old order that you care to.
I can say I can see on my side, I see Kazumi-san first.
Hi. Nice to meet you, Kim, and everybody. I'm in Philadelphia. I took after Kim's position. It's a big task, but I'm happy that Kim, you are here with us, and all of you. Misha, I found out that you are from Philadelphia. You studied here, and Marissa, everybody. Thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
And then I have Teresa.
Sure. Teresa, Japan American Society of Indiana. We've had this grand dream of creating a Japanese garden in Indiana for many years, and Ken Brown has been involved in some of those efforts. So far, we haven't reached that dream goal, but it's still out there, and we're really excited about the Portland meeting and today, and the connection between NAJGA and NAJAS. We've also been a member of NAJGA. I'm not saying it correctly. There was a small project. It may still be in development, but it's not a jazzy project. But we're always so thrilled and excited about Japanese gardens and the potential that they have and the beauty, as I know we all are. So great to be here and appreciate everybody pulling this together.
Hey, Teresa, thanks for that great intro. And maybe I would just encourage everybody to do that. After you introduce yourself, please give us a snippet on what your connection to Japanese gardens in your area is. That will be a great overview for everybody.
Before I toss to the next person, I just want to note from the Philly connection, as Kaze-san noted, so I used to go to the Philly Flower Show every year. So I'm excited to hear more about flower show connections too. And now I'll toss it over to Wayne.
Hi, Wayne Stout, Japan American Society of Southern Colorado. we have here in Colorado Springs another association or organization. It's called the Golden Lotus Foundation. And they are creating a Asian Heritage Center for all the Asian groups that are in Colorado Springs. And on this property, they want to have a Japanese garden. So that is my interest in participating in this session. And I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Hey, Melissa.
Hi, my name is Melissa Hill. I'm in Japan American Society of Dallas-Fort Worth. I started my position in April of this year. I'm coming back from 14 years in Japan. In our area, we have a huge, we call it the Metroplex. We say we're Dallas and Fort Worth, but it's an incredibly large area. In the Fort Worth Botanical Gardens, we have a Japanese garden, and I'm really interested in pulling in more of our members, some of whom do like bonsai. I'm really interested in pulling more of our members and getting more involvement in the Fort Worth side of our organization. So I'm really interested to learn from all of my senpai about Japanese gardens. So nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Melissa. And Michi?
Hi, everyone. My name is Michi Calcagno. I'm the ED here in Raleigh, North Carolina, so Jazz, North Carolina. We actually have 5 Japanese gardens in the state. One of the larger ones is probably a Duke. And I'm also aware of a group that's trying to basically develop another Japanese garden right outside of Charlotte. And they're looking for funding. And so I'm just interested in general to see kind of what's involved in all of this. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Michi. And next to you, Chip.
Chip Meyer, the Executive Director, Japan American Society, St. Louis. St. Louis is blessed to have Seiwa and a Japanese garden in the Missouri Botanical Garden, which I think is one of the premier Japanese gardens in the country. And we work very closely with them already. They put on a Japanese festival over Labor Day weekend every year, which draws 30 to 40,000 people over the 3-day weekend. And we have also started to work with them on another event, Sake and Sakura, which is a sake tasting and Japanese spirits tasting event that also includes trips out to the tea island in the Japanese garden with a educational component there. So I am here just to see if there's anything we're overlooking, any new ideas, because we have a strong relationship with the garden, the Japanese garden and the botanical garden, but might be something that obvious that we've overlooked or something not so obvious that we can learn here.
Thank you, Chip. And pass it to Mike.
Hello, everyone. So glad to see a lot of familiar faces on this call. I'm Mike Turner, president of the Japan Society of New Orleans. I'm also president of the Japanese Garden Foundation of New Orleans. I like to say I don't join a nonprofit that I can't be president of. It's one of those things, but I'm very interested in this call. I think I spoke with Kim Andrews at a previous annual meeting about the possibility of our garden foundation joining the North American Garden Association. Still have that on my radar. I think we actually hosted a visitor from the UK that was right before or around Mardi Gras, something earlier this year. Very interesting. So I had a nice conversation. I think she enjoyed the visit to our garden. We're small, but we're powerful. Interesting garden, Lafcadio Hearns, it's Yakimo Nihongo 10. So looking forward to hearing about more information today.
Thank you, Mike. And over to Claudine.
Hi, I'm Claudine Locascio, Executive Director, Japan American Society of Colorado. We have a very nice relationship with the Denver Botanic Gardens, and they have a beautiful Japanese garden there. And I really just joined the call to listen in and see if I could learn anything new.
Thank you, Claudine. And Graham.
Hi, everyone. Graham Morris, Executive Director, Japan America Society of Oregon. And we're looking forward to welcoming many of you this summer to the National Convention. And I think most of you know that at that time we'll be going up to see the Portland Japanese Garden, which is certainly before COVID was the second most popular tourist attraction in Oregon, and gets hundreds of thousands of visitors every year. We have the executive director of the garden is on our board of directors, and they actually support us financially through the year. And we've had periods where we've done events at the garden. Right now we're in a period where we're not doing an event at the garden, but we're always kind of open to collaboration on that side of things. Interestingly, there's actually a ton of Japanese gardens all around Oregon. I'm assuming it's because it rains so much here, but it could actually be because we have 23 sister city relationships, and a lot of those gardens are connected to that relationship. A lot of them are also really small and just kind of cute and places. I was at one at a middle school the other day in Newburgh, and so I'm interested to, I want to leverage it somehow, but I don't know how, I guess is the question in my mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. And Amy?
Somehow I managed to make you the smallest item on my screen. Sorry, Misha. Very nice to see everybody. Happy to see all your faces. I'm Amy Boots. I'm the executive director of the Japan America Society of Pennsylvania in Pittsburgh. So we're sharing the state with Philadelphia over here. We have a couple private Japanese gardens and sort of a garden in progress at the Pittsburgh Botanic Gardens and a small garden and bonsai collection at Phipps Conservatory. And I think Jazz, I'm going to say it wrong, Garden Association had the meeting last year in Pittsburgh. So we're glad to have you here. Looking forward to learning more.
Thank you, Amy. And Lisanne? You can go ahead and come off mute. Lisanne, are you here? All right, well, we'll go ahead, but if any point you're able to jump in, please do feel free.
He'll come back and tell us about the Mate Botanical Garden, I'm sure, when she surfaces. But have we gotten otherwise all the way around the Zoom room, thanks to Misha's tour? Anybody else think of anything or any other comments? Hearing not, I'd love to turn things over to our esteemed guests from the other association. What order would you folks like to speak in? How will we proceed?
I think, Marisa, you said that I would go first, followed by Jeanette, right? Okay. So it's a pleasure to speak with the Japan America Society of North America, and I have had the pleasure to meet some of you. I know Teresa, yes, I remember well the trip to Indianapolis several years ago, tramping out in a field park that we had discussed as a potential Japanese garden site. And I did speak in Dallas maybe 10 years ago before one of Melissa's predecessors. And it's just great to see your knowledge of Japanese gardens. And I think you've given us just a quick barometer of how ubiquitous Japanese gardens or Japanese style gardens we sometimes say are in North America. There's probably more public Japanese gardens in North America than there are in Japan. It's a universal phenomenon. There have been 150 years of Japanese gardens in North America, almost 148. My math is correct. The first one was built in Philadelphia in 1876 for the Centennial Exposition. And indeed, Japanese gardens in Europe, North America, around the world started in the late 19th century built by the Japanese government and sometimes entrepreneurs as part of World's Fairs, international expositions. Those were so popular, they often gave way to tea gardens. San Francisco Golden Gate Park Tea Garden is one of these World's Fair progeny. And then elite people built residential gardens in Japanese styles. Few of those survive, but if you've been to the Huntington in Pasadena, Greater Los Angeles, that is one of these commercial tea gardens that was morphed into a residential garden. So pre-World War, from 1876 to World War II, 1939-40, the San Francisco, New York World's Fairs, Japanese gardens were built largely by the Japanese government at expositions. And their function was really sort of political, soft cultural power, we could say, polite words for propaganda. Look at the garden as a sort of symbol of the nation and our national heritage. And they were wildly popular. After World War II, obviously, Japan and America had a very contentious, quote, war without mercy, according to John Dower's great book. And in the wake of the war and American occupation of Japan, and then the Cold War, in 1956, Dwight Eisenhower, president, started sister cities, especially to make friends with West Germany and Japan. And as an outgrowth of the citizen-to-citizen diplomacy, sister city gardens were built. And there's, we've just ticked off a number of them. They're almost in every major American city has one, if not multiple sister city gardens, large and small. And these did a great job in bringing Japanese gardens back into the American mainstream post-war. And in addition to sister city public parks gardens, middle-class residential gardens, Sunset Magazine in the West, other Home Beautiful now really pushed Japanese gardens across North America in the late 50s and 60s. One, it was part of Cold War, post-war Orientalism. It's called middle-brow Orientalism, academics call it. But it was also a desire to really connect Japanese aesthetics and culture to America in a positive way. Kind of, we would think of wabi and sabi and kind of a reform of the American residential space. Then the third stage, and it's a Japanese garden historian of Japanese gardens outside Japan, Makoto Suzuki, now retired, has made this chronology that I'm giving you. Starting in the late 1980s, 1990s, we kind of had a third phase in Japanese gardens internationally, and this is diversification. They really start to evolve. They start to put down deep roots. They move away from exotica. They move away from kind of symbolism, and now they appear at schools, elementary schools, junior high schools, colleges, hence Cal State Long Beach. 5 of the 19 California state universities have Japanese gardens. They're now at hospitals. They are at a penitentiary. Oregon State Penitentiary has one from about 4 or 5 years ago. And they're changing their mission. And that's really where NAJGA gets involved. Japanese gardens in America are shifting from displays of culture, from a little bit of exotica, from symbols of Japan and symbols of friendship. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that has often not been sustainable at gardens across the country. And they're really shifting to places of activity. So I think of them as now as dynamic spaces more than symbolic. So in some ways, just to repeat that key idea, that Japanese gardens had, before 1970, been seen as a microcosm of Japanese culture. I teach Japanese art history, and thank you, Andy, for pushing my art history. Here's my most recent publication, an exhibition now at the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, on songs for modern Japan. So I'm very much about teaching Japanese culture. This is my day job as an art historian, but in my hobby as a garden proponent, Japanese gardens do more than art does, the literature does. People do things in garden. So the kind of open model that NAJGA represents is seeing Japanese gardens as a microcosm of idealized nature, informed but not limited to Japanese culture. And we see this is really opening up in and our colleagues in Japan are very much embracing this. In some ways, we could think of Japanese gardens as a little like classical music. You know, it originated in Europe, but now, you know, the greatest cellist is Yo-Yo Ma. And just as this musical form that evolved in Europe has now spread worldwide, so too have Japanese gardens. And so I think key to this new kind of opening up of Japanese gardens is seeing them as dynamic spaces in which you can do many things. And this is really not new at all. I often quote the famous 11th century manual, Sakuteki, Notes on Garden Making. Everybody quotes the first 2 paragraphs. You have to, you know, be attentive to your physical location, the patron, and the abilities of the people around it. Okay. The 3rd chapter of Sakuteki says, make sure you leave enough space on the central island in your garden so there's plenty of room for musicians. Gardens are dynamic spaces that bring people together. And I often say, bring out that kind of the angels of our better nature. Here we are in an idealized microcosm of nature in which we're going to connect with that nature in a positive way. And in doing so, find our better selves and connect with others in powerful ways. And this really explains why you now see gardens at hospitals and penitentiaries. And increasingly, when we founded NAJGA, Jeanette and myself and Steve Bloom, the soon-to-retire CEO of the Portland Japanese Garden, we came up with a mission statement, which was to sustain Japanese gardens in 3 dimensions: horticulture, better design, better maintenance, we now call that fostering; business culture, they have to be able to support themselves financially; but most importantly, human culture, because they're built by people for people. And we then evolved a mission statement. I think Kim Andrews and I came up with a mission statement, which was really, we maintain and foster gardens in order to make our lives better, both individually and our societies better. So in the end, it's really, we're maintaining gardens, we're improving them, we're proselytizing for them because they matter deeply to us. And in fact, in the post-pandemic world, almost every public Japanese garden has seen its membership double, triple. The Phoenix Japanese Garden has quintupled its membership. In fact, right now, today, I got an email they're looking for 3 new positions. The Portland Japanese Garden went from 19 full-time employees to about 125. So gardens are a dynamic growth industry. And I think it's largely because the gardens themselves have opened up in dynamic ways. So I think I was allotted 10 minutes. I'm going to assume that I've pretty much filled that. I think that's the sort of the big picture. And Jeanette is now going to talk about, I think, Jeanette, we didn't plan this, but follow up on that and how this open, dynamic view of Japanese gardens, public, private, business-oriented, are now evolving, and fundraising opportunities that flow.
If I could just for a moment, thank you very much, Dr. Brown. That was a sweeping and inspiring overview. And I'd heard elements of that, not surprisingly, from your co-founder, Jeanette, on an earlier call, which made me know that we had to have this wider conversation. And one of the elements you spoke on was the business culture element. And that was one of the themes that Jeanette also spoke very eloquently about on that call. And that really resonated with me, the role I've had for just a little over a year, and hearing about some of the challenges that our network is confronting on that area. And one of the comments that Jeanette made was, yeah, our associations are a lot alike in the mission and the passion and the subject. But one thing that's different is the gardens are infrastructure heavy, and this makes them capital enterprises. And Jeanette, you spoke very, I thought, impactfully about the way relationships underpin the way the most successful gardens have exhibited that great growth that Ken spoke about. So I'd ask you to prepare some of your comments to touch on that. So thank you both, and Marissa, for making this possible.
Well, thanks, Andy, and thanks for the good setup as always, Ken. As Ken said, gardens are created by people for people. And they have really become these centers of community action, and they contribute greatly to the quality of life in their communities, as long as the garden is appropriately staffed and has reached a certain level of maturity in its organization. They are centers for people to come together and work together to do good in their communities, everything from wellness opportunities, education, cultural education, relaxation, just helping us all calm down a little bit from the pace of modern life. And so we really see Japanese gardens as platforms for Japanese culture and for contributing to our communities in very meaningful ways. And one of the things, Andy, that you and I spoke about as US-Japan related organizations, we face common challenges. And two of those challenges that I think we spoke about was the generational change that is happening in the United States, in particular with the Japanese cultural community. I know in my own garden, we had wonderful partnerships with our local Japanese Cultural Center. And we also had relationships with our different organizations like Sister Cities and JAS and other similar organizations. But as time went on, we all realized that we were getting older. You know, better in some ways, like fine wine, but definitely starting to look towards who's behind us, who's going to be taking over. I've got this baton, it's been lots of fun, but who am I gonna hand it to? And so we became very concerned with developing a pipeline, so to speak, so that as much as we all had enjoyed working together, that there was somebody to take over from us when it was time for us to, you know, slow down a little bit and just come and visit the gardens and not actually have to work in the gardens. And so part of that has become a very hot topic in our organization, is how do we sustain the Japanese gardens if we don't sustain the generational change? And I believe that this is a question that's broader than any one of our organizations. And because Japanese gardens do depend on having good partners to work with in our communities, it just makes sense that we all put our heads together and figure out what's the best ways to bring younger people into our organizations. We need to understand the younger generations, because each generation tends to have its own sort of perspective and characteristics. And so it might mean that we do some things differently in order to attract younger people. And I know a lot of the gardens have been working hard to change their programming so that they attract younger people. You know, it's sometimes the hardest group to get is that 30 to 50 age group. They're deep in the dark heart of parenting and career building, and they're busy folks, and they have a different perspective. And then I'm a boomer, I acknowledge, I confess. And so we really have to think about what is a win-win situation for them. And I know at our garden, we developed a lot of youth and children programming above and beyond our school outreach, family programming that would appeal to people that have children and that can bring their children with them. We even had story time and a few things where they actually could drop their kids off for an hour or so, because that became very popular. But in order to make acquaintance with a generation of people, and to work closely with our other collaborators, so that if anybody sort of had some success, that we could share that with each other. The other big challenge that we all face, all nonprofits face, is having enough financial resources to execute our aspirational programming, our missions, to carry on. And this was a topic that for me turned out to be something that took a while to figure out. How many of you are involved in fundraising with your society? See some hands. Yeah. I can't see a lot of cameras are off, but I'd be surprised if everyone on this call isn't involved in some way with trying to raise funds. And I was sharing with Andy a little bit about my aha moments with fundraising. You mentioned sharing best practices and what we've learned. And a couple things that I learned with fundraising is, number one, fundraising is a team sport. It's not just your development director, if you have one, or your director, or your president, or your chair, or the person who in the past has always done it. It's really a team sport. And as I began to realize that, because I came out of architecture and engineering to my role at the garden, I didn't come from development role. I took the course, I got the little certificate, I understand the terminology, but actually doing it is harder than reading about doing it. And in fact, I have read that asking people for money ranks right up there with public speaking in terms of what people are deathly afraid of. I've had board members, when I'm recruiting them, or key volunteers, and they will say, Jeanette, I will do anything for you and the garden, but don't ask me to ask other people for money. And I don't know, has anybody else had that experience? Yeah. So it took a little while for me to get the idea. One of the people that really helped me was Jim Folsom from the Huntington Library and Gardens. Have any of you been to that beautiful garden? I mean, it is just amazing. Beautiful Japanese garden, 200 and some acres, just wonderful. And he was director of horticulture. And it was right about the time, just after we had formed NAJGA, I think. And we asked him to present on how he was able to raise so much money to start the Chinese garden. That was a huge, many, many, many millions required to start that garden. And so Jim came, and I don't even think he had slides or anything. He just spoke kind of extemporaneously, but he said, as a horticulturist, a person who loves plants, of course, he brought great enthusiasm to his work. And he realized early on that by establishing friendly relationships with people and maintaining those relationships and finding people who shared a passion for what the work was, the horticultural work, that's really what's the pathway to raising money. And so he told me about this gentleman that got involved, and he was a corporate guy, but he loved plants. And Jim started saying, well, do you want to come with me to go plant hunting in Central America? And the guy was like all over it. Yeah, I want to go. They went camping, and they developed a real relationship. And when this person passed on, in his estate plan, he had left $18 million to the Huntington for the beginning of the Chinese garden to get it started. That was maybe the lead gift, because that was a hugely expensive project. And then he also told me there was this docent, very modest, school teacher, not married, a little on the shy side, but she was a docent for 30 years at their Japanese garden. And he always tried to say hi to her, and she was very sweet. Had no idea that she was really donor potential, but he maintained this positive relationship with her, would share little bits of news, that before it became common knowledge, everywhere. And again, upon her death, she gave a $1 million+ gift to help renovate the Japanese garden. So I know these are both estate kind of gifts that I'm talking about. But in my experience, and I'm sure Kim and others of you who are been directors, people give money to causes they believe in. And more importantly, they give money to people. So establishing these trusting relationships where you have mutual passion for the outcomes of your organization. That's another thing I had to learn. We don't focus on the dollars we need to do something. We focus on what we're going to be able to do. What positive improvement that we are going to make for our community if we had this money. And it has really helped us at NAJGA. I'm not saying we've cracked the code or anything, but it really does help move an organization forward. And I know from my work with sister cities, you have a lot of wonderful people who maybe have not had much fundraising experience. And so just getting everybody on the same page so that everybody knows what the need is and everybody's bought in to what we're trying to accomplish. And then we work like a team, because I know, let's say, Chip, were you talking about St. Louis, the festival, and you have how many thousands of people that come to that? At any event that any of us can host, the fundraiser types can only talk to, interact with so many people, small number of people. But if your whole team knows what the need is, knows what the goal is, and kind of has had enough training with fundraising that they can help cultivate as a person of interest, somebody who gets excited about the cultural program or whatever it is that you're showcasing. If they can know that they need to share the information, like my docents, once we all got working together, would at an event or after the event, they would say, oh, I met this really interesting person and their name is such and such. And I got their business card and I think this person, would really be interested. I think, we should follow up with them. That kind of collaborative work when you're trying to raise money is so impactful. If everybody knows what the goal is, maybe the docent would never want to ask anybody for money. But if the docent can meet somebody, get a business card, pass the information along, that puts them in a very powerful position of helping move the goals forward. So those are just a little bit of insights from my neck of the woods. And I think that as you all were talking, I realized Chip, we're going to be in St. Louis in just a few days. We're meeting with Ben Chu at Mobot because we're going to be hosting our next conference in October of 2025 there. And so St. Louis and Mobot is squarely, in our near future. And so I look forward to seeing you in your natural habitat in St. Louis.
Yeah, I hope we'll have an opportunity to meet while you're here.
Yeah, and many of you, we were just in Pittsburgh at a private garden doing a Northwest or Northeast, excuse me, regional event. And the folks affiliated with the Dallas-Fort Worth JAS, we were just in your neck of the woods and had the opportunity to meet many of you. NAJGA recognizes that partnerships and collaborations are vital to the execution of our mission to help sustain the Japanese gardens in North America. And we very much would like to enhance the relationship that we have with NJAS and all of you. I think we can all help each other. So there's some formal relationships like in Philadelphia, where we're, very, very tightly linked. And there are the looser affiliations. But as we go through this time of change, I think we can support each other. And I think we'll be stronger. There's some real synergy between your work, your mission, and our mission and our work. And so I'm very excited to see what we might think of to do together. So I think I've left some time for Q&A.
Thank you, Jeanette. Another great presentation. I just want to thank both of you. I mean, we got out of that gardens are globalizing, gardens are dynamic spaces. They've been around at least 3 decades longer than the oldest Japan-America Society, and they're opening up still further. And then the idea that fundraising really is at heart a team sport, a team vocation. It takes expertise, passion, and being likable helps too. So those were great messages for us. So let's turn it over to the team. I don't want to cut Marissa off. If you have some questions or inputs, or would you like to call on any of the societies? If we don't have any questions, I'm sure we will. But please, we want to include you as well, Marissa.
No, definitely. I'm just excited to be here and connect with all of you. So no, let's go. Any comments, questions, thoughts you all have?
Can I ask a very basic question?
Sure.
So you mentioned that you were thinking about developing pipeline by involving more families and like small kind of kids programming at the gardens. Personally, like I really want to do that kind of activities. Are you very when you're planning those kind of events, are you very much like weather worried? Because us in Dallas-Fort Worth area, we have the whole summer where we can't really do anything outside. So I was wondering how do you kind of weatherize those kind of events, and then what kind of things you do?
Okay, well, thanks. I've never had a job where I haven't had to worry about the weather. When I was in engineering, Jesus, if it would rain and wash our job out, I would be up in the middle of the night checking the job site. And then I get into Japanese garden, same deal, trying to do events in an outdoor venue. So yes, weather is definitely a consideration, but there's some workarounds. For instance, if you're saying outdoors in the summer is hard because it's hot, is that kind of what your concern was? I would say consider doing some evening things or some early morning things. Kids actually get up really early. And so if you're not talking teenagers, that doesn't hold if it's a teenage group you're going for. But we started doing a lot of things in the evenings. I think we were one of the first Japanese gardens who did a complete illumination plan. But a lot of the gardens have done that now. Twilight, after 5 o'clock, 5 to 7, depending on where you're at. If you're more north, boy, it can go kind of late because it doesn't get dark until late. But consider some evening things. And then you do have to be sort of strategic about thinking what time of the year. We had in California, you know, we have a lot of good weather, but our nemesis was sports. Choosing times where families that had kids in soccer and that kind of thing. So the programming team gave good thought, and we actively recruited moms to be involved with us. And that's a little tricky. Getting a mom with a couple of kids, especially maybe getting a mom who's also working kids. But we made every effort to have people working with us as volunteers who were representative of the demographic that we were targeting.
Let me follow up, Melissa, on the first part of your question. Yes, Jeanette, absolutely right. Gardens that Phoenix used to be closed all summer. Now they're open 6 till 11 a.m. and they find that people go. Fresno, hot in the summer, they're open 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. 9 p.m. in the summer. The other kind of major change is instead of that, often gardens, you know, we heard from Chip in St. Louis about, you know, the numbers of people. Brooklyn Botanic Garden gets 70,000 in a weekend, which was great financially. It was terrible for the actual garden. It was, you know, madhouse, destructive. So now they're doing targeted small family events. And again, at times that work for families, like middle of the day or morning, and kind of by invitation, smaller events, because they find that it's also it's outreach to communities that might not otherwise come. So there's some definite targeting going on in kind of intimate and miniature is the wrong word, but intimate small groups, and targeting is something that gardens who've had plenty of success with the giant, you know, festival are now they're not getting rid of one, but they're adding on the others.
Yeah, size of event is really important for fundraising as well, because it's very hard to do a good job of fundraising at the 34,000 people kind of event. You know, most of that fundraising happens before and after the event, but yeah, it's the size of your event, who you're targeting, and making sure that you've included people in your planning group who are from the demographic that you're targeting.
Okay, we have a question from Michi.
Yes. So my question is around like what kinds of collaborations have you done with other JAS organizations? I'm kind of new, so I'm not really familiar with what you might have done in the past.
Right. Well, we one of the things that gardens sometimes do in order to spark a relationship, because we have the venue, I have offered my venue for JAS meetings. You know, I have to squeeze it in at times when I'm not, you know, taking generating income kind of event off the table. But so we have done that, and that has allowed us to meet people, you know. So from the garden side, that can be a benefit.
From the JAS side, it seems that it's a like productive ambient environment. You know, you're talking about Japan, not in a hotel ballroom, but in a really kind of compelling, beautiful, productive space. People often say about Japanese gardens, when you're there and nowhere else. So it helps people focus and it brings them together. So that, I think that's what it does for the non-Japanese garden side. And for the garden, it brings new people in, as Jeanette has been saying, you know, it introduces them to a space that they might not otherwise have known or cared about. And that's obviously getting them through the door is the first step.
Let me jump in if I can. So we really appreciated our membership in NAJA, as we were hoping to partner with the development of a garden. And they offer a lot of great online workshops and programs that really let you see a lot of creative programming that gardens are doing all over the country. So it could be, as a JAS director, that you might be sparked by a creative idea and realize that would be a great program for our society. And you really pick up a lot of those ideas through their online programming. So that's a great way to get new ideas and understand ways you can partner locally.
Yeah, we just did a webinar, golly, was it a week or so ago on, so you want to build a Japanese garden, now what? And because we've gotten so many calls from different people who are wanting, somebody mentioned somebody in North Carolina that wants to build a garden near Charlotte. I think I met with those folks. We had a breakfast meeting a number of months ago. Because we are representing the gardens of all sizes, private, public, large, small, we have some insight into how those get built and where your first steps are and some strategies to pull it together. I was just at a meeting today at Denver Botanical, and on the way home, we were talking about a project up in Boulder that we heard about this weekend, and brainstorming about how we can engage with different organizations, because gardens, because they tend to be very attractive to different constituencies. And so we know some people. And it's about figuring out where the win-win is, you know. And so in this conversation, they were saying, yeah, we need to work with JS, we need to work with this university, we need to work with this political initiative that's concerned about the place of the area of this venue or this garden, potential garden, is a neighborhood that's needs a lot of support, and there's some groups that are working on trying to better that. It's right next to a high school. They're, you know, just sort of identifying the potential collaborators and who would be interested in how that would help them with their own work, their own missions. So yeah, I think gardens have had a lot of gardens have had a fair amount of experience in finding people who care, you know. You have to find those people who care. They're out there, but you just have to find them.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you, Michi. I did want to note that we are coming to the end of an hour here. Definitely very happy to keep this space open if our lovely garden expert friends are up for staying, and if folks on the call are also up for more conversation. We're very happy to keep this going, but I do want to note for anyone who needed to drop at the hour that we've come to the end of the call, and it's been a really fantastic conversation.
There, Chip.
I have a very specific question. One of our members has brought the idea of doing a plein air painting or drawing event in the Japanese garden. I'm wondering if anyone has any experience with doing something like that in a Japanese garden, and if so, if there's any lessons learned or anything you can share to.
You know, that goes way back in the Tale of Genji from early 11th century. They talk about using gardens. I said gardens are places for people. For example, let's go into the garden and let's make paintings of the garden. Then let's hang the paintings, small paintings, actually from trees and shrubs in the garden, and use it both as the subject of the art and the display venue. So there's great historic precedent for that. I think at Cal State Long Beach, where we have an art department that I'm part of, that students in plein air painting, sketching often do that in the garden. So garden is a great, off middle of the day is not so good when the sun is bright. Cloudy day, a cloudy season, or again, early or late, the golden hour are the best times. And then why not display the art in the garden? And so we're thinking, a garden is less, it's not like a museum. You don't go there just to look at the things. You go there to have experiences. And gardens lend themselves wonderfully to art, to drama, to musical performance. And they always have. It's only really in the 20th century when the gardens that we know in Japan, became tourist locations that they opened at 9 and they closed at 5. But historically, they were for parties and events and art and poetry making and drama, all happened in the garden. And why not bring that back? This is part of when I say dynamic, that is exactly what I mean.
Yeah, I imagine at Shofuso, do you have art groups that come?
Where?
At Shofuso.
Yes, Shofuso, yes.
Yeah, Kim, maybe you and my predecessor, go ahead. Yeah, we have lots of artists coming, musicians and performing arts and lectures and presentations, architects. Kim, would you like to add more parties who visited us?
Sure. I mean, we use the garden for so much art, generating art from we had summer camp for a time, but children's classes, neighborhood groups, neighborhood sketching classes for teenagers. It's such a great way to engage like every single age group possible, every skill level. You get, real painters who are setting up an easel with real paints, and then you can give a kid a clipboard and a pencil and they can draw something. So it's just, as Ken said, it makes the garden come alive by using it.
I have to say, St. Louis, I've been there many times. It's so big. It looked great when it was full of people at that festival. But why if you're skeptics out there, I'm a skeptic, so I'm going to address the skeptics. Why are gardens better than classrooms? In a classroom, and I teach in a classroom, but it doesn't work that well. There's something kind of confrontational. There's a front, there's a back, there's walls, everybody's a little tense. And gardens just get rid of that. They obliterate that sense of hierarchy, and they put everybody on kind of equal footing in a positive, productive mood. And they always have. And so in many ways, we're kind of returning them to their kind of natural functions as, productive ambient spaces that bring out the best in us because they make us relax and they pull us together.
So Chip, your plein air idea is, a great one. I would say on the practical side of it, because we had a lot of hardscaping in our garden that could be stained by oils, and then there's the whole, what do you do with it when they're over, and do you put it in a utility sink, or people just take all that home? We decided we would do sketching and watercolor, but we didn't do oils. We did collaborate with not only just university classes, but a lot of art groups, private teachers. If the teacher was charging, we would charge a small fee, but if it was just a group where nobody was making money on it, they just paid for their entry fee. If you were doing an event where painting was going to be part of it, kind of like what Ken was saying about showcasing the what's produced. It's very interesting, and when you have painters in a garden, the other people in the garden are very interested in seeing it, and so we just do that sort of casually, where people are walking through while the artists are doing their work, and that's great. But we've also had several instances where either a group or a student class brings their finished work back in, and we do a fundraiser, sort of wine and art kind of thing. And so we were able to do a lot for free, because then there'd be this event that would be showcasing the product, and we could use that to generate streams of income. So different ways to do it.
I had a bit of an organizational question as we're discovering the rich set of opportunities we have to collaborate further. Is there something that we can be doing on a high level to focus on this, to accelerate, facilitate more of the use of these dynamic spaces? It sounds like almost every JAS and every garden knows about their immediate environs. But is there any resource, or could we set up one that would help direct people to, so-and-so's, not just the Portland Garden, but there's another institute that's being built up. There's more space. Consider moving your event over here.
First thing we did when we before we founded NAJGA, we made a National Garden Finder, which is still on the website. So you can look at you're traveling or in your neighborhood of what gardens exist. So that is something that we have. So in your region, maybe you have one big city, but you don't have all your events there. Is there a Japanese garden somewhere else? And what is it like? So it tells you where the gardens are, and then it takes you to their home pages. So you can see if it's worthwhile for you maybe to have an event there.
That's what we
Yes, we set up Show First of the Japanese House has been in Philadelphia since 1958. But recently, the attendance jumped up due to Kim Andrews' enormous contribution to 30,000, but it's a small amount compared to the other gardens. What we do now is to make a member-only nights, presenting the performing arts. You mentioned all those things, artists, and dancing and taiko drumming, you name it. And that actually bumped up the other membership registrations.
Right.
Yeah, and I think there's maybe there are some sort of large issues, societal issues that are on your radar. That is part of what Japanese gardens are also thinking about too. I'm thinking about things like wellness amongst young people. I think we all have an interest in young people. Now, whether we describe that as sort of the young children or high school, college age children. I think mental illness is kind of like the #1 societal mental or health issue of the day. And we're all interested in helping youth. I think it fits within everybody's mission. And what is it that we can do collaboratively that would satisfy our aspirational goals by working collaboratively on it? I think, Marissa, we were throwing around some ideas for a recent grant focused on youth wellness. I know at our university, student suicides were on the upswing, and mental health was a big issue amongst faculty and staff. And also with my work with Sister Cities, we were sending students to Japan every year. We had a home exchange, cultural exchange program, teacher and 2 students every year. We had a group of 5 that were going every year to our sister city that has a big port and has a big environmental institute that they've created. And so on our side, we needed to prepare our students about environmental issues, and Long Beach is a port city. And so we had, once the students were chosen, we had many, many months of training that we involved them with. We worked with some of our partners at the Japanese Cultural Center to have a dinner with the students that were going to Japan, just to make sure that they could use their chopsticks appropriately to jam their chopsticks down into the rice. Or other faux pas, that we tried to help them with their language skills and just their cultural awareness. And so anything that has to do with youth is probably going to be a common denominator. So it's a matter of us understanding, like, what are you centering your focus on? We have a lot of focus on environmental issues, climate change, developing resiliency in our communities because of all the weather issues. I guess, Marissa, we're bringing the heat with us as we go east, because there's an excessive heat warning out there for, I think, every city that we're going to visit. What are some of the broader societal issues that JAS is interested in or has programming around? Is there anything like that?
I've certainly heard, and we spoke a little bit, Jeanette, and that's one of the reasons we're excited about having you join us in Portland, because there were 2 or 3 broader themes that we wanted to shed some light on. And I would say the most common one that I heard was youth engagement. Now, we took it a little bit narrowly. How do we keep our societies vital and growing? But I think it extends much wider to the societal impact, the wellness issues that you talked about. So I think I can say that the group is looking at that as an issue area. And we're also looking for, at the NAJAS level, new themes and grants and initiatives, and just brainstorming the thought of, from the get-go, partnering with an important space like the gardens, and developing a program that talked about sustainability, about, well, that would be magical. That would sort of lead us, both in the direction that we want to go in terms of the content and the outreach.
And as you're talking, I'm thinking certainly leadership is a topic with the Yokkaichi Sister Cities. Really what our sort of flagship, mission was, fostering youth leadership for the 21st century. Now, what are youth interested in? Well, they do have an interest, just very straightforwardly, in Japanese culture. It may have come through their love of anime or other sort of trending cultural experiences. But you sort of have to meet people wherever they are. So
that's an excellent point, Jeanette. I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to jump in there as a teacher. I mean, in the 30 years, students their interest in Japan has moved from analog ikebana tea ceremony to virtual anime. And I think how to pull them into a more sustained, non-digital, non-virtual connection to Japanese culture is our challenge, right? Because they're already in the anime manga world. And I think that really nature and kind of the mindfulness is important. And think of the Miyazaki films, Spirited Away, Princess Mononoke, and virtually all of them. They're about that in some deep way. So I think that's an area where we could really do outreach. And Andy spoke about, grants, using their interest, hitting them where they live, and then using it to pull them into the physical spaces of Japanese gardens and Japan beyond the screen. So maybe a targeted grant there.
Yeah, and finding funders who are interested in nonprofits collaborating. That's something that we're looking at, is the kind of funders that realize, gee, there's a lot of nonprofits out there. Are they leveraging appropriately their resources? Are they working together? And if we can identify funders who are interested in nonprofits collaborating, it's usually good for a funder. because they're investing. And if they get a bigger impact for their investment, it's good for them. You know, it's good for their board of directors to talk to their members and say, look what we've been able to accomplish. You know, we can amplify our individual investment by working together on things. I think we just continue the conversation a little bit and see where it takes us. The good thing is you have broad scope. I mean, you're spread out all over North America, and a lot of the places where we have gardens, there's JAS is already there. So as far as proximity is concerned, I think we're well positioned. It's just for us to figure out what is, where can we have the most impact if we work together.
It's fascinating, Jeanette, and it was very interesting that Ken's comments almost cut in the other direction. He was saying, you know, it's to some degree, digital is our enemy. We're trying to, not enemy, we're trying to leverage that and pull people into the real world. But I'm hearing the same thing that you commented on from donors. Great, we've been with you, we like this program, and that was a great lecture for 65 people. But what else are you doing? Who are you touching? Who are the new groups?
Yeah.
So I think we're going to be pushed in that direction, like it or not.
I think so, and I think that, you know, the silver lining with COVID for many nonprofits was the fact that it forced us to get a grip on Zoom and for working, you know, collaboratively, even though we're miles and miles away from each other. But and our digital programming is really key for us. We love face-to-face. You know, I always look forward to our conference, which happens every 2 years, just so I can get face-to-face. There's a lot of magic that happens. We go on the road as much as we can afford to because we want to create those face-to-face opportunities. But a lot of what we all can do is going to have to be facilitated by this kind of, you know, speaking to each other through Zoom or through other digital, virtual, you know, platforms, you know, and it's good, you know, it's a good mix. Yeah, and the funders want a lot of bang for their buck. Yeah.
Yep. That's what we're hearing.
We get it. We want a lot for what we invest too. So, but I think the potential is really there, and it's so exciting to work with people of goodwill who have it in their own hearts to make their communities better places for their communities and to make it a better world. You can sit down and watch the news at night and get pretty depressed if you don't have something really positive to balance it out. And I think for me, that's this kind of work. They call it work, but if you do something you love, is it really work?
Right. Well, I think we walked the walk today, and finding the common passion and the overlaps and showing that the technology can bring us together, and people wanted to stick around and keep talking into overtime.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
to benefit from that next session, let's look forward to making the most of our time in Portland, where we'll see Marissa and Jeanette. Ken, are we lucky enough to catch you too? Oh, you're on that.
Maybe, perhaps.
That would be wonderful if you could.
Well, we'll look forward to it, you know, because like I said, I think face-to-face is some magical things happen, you know, when we get together, and I look forward to seeing everybody that I've already had the pleasure to meet, and to meet new people. That's great.
And we'll look up the JG Finder and look for other things that we can maybe pursue, and maybe even launch. And
right,
that'd be great.
And I think, Marissa, you started creating a list of where there's gardens and where there's JAS, that, you know, within a reasonable proximity.
Yeah, I mean, both
I'd
are.
love to know if you're ever in the North Carolina area.
Nietzsche, I'm coming in a couple of weeks.
Where?
Yeah, and in fact, I was talking to my friend who I'm going to visit, and she said, "Do you want to go to Raleigh, Durham? They have a garden there."
Oh my God.
So maybe the answer is yes. Maybe we
get
do.
in touch. Yes, definitely get in touch. I would love to meet you in person.
I'll send you an email. We'll
Okay.
stay in touch. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm just curious, Lizanne, did you come back? We lost Lizanne. Oh, well, the next one.
Okay. The mystery of Zoom.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you so
everybody.
much.
Wonderful
Thank you.
to see you.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everybody. It was wonderful.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank
Good
you.
afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Great job. Great
This
talk.
was great, Andy. Thank you so much for hosting this. And it's wonderful to have another extended conversation. We visited some territory that we'd already talked about, but it's great to, as I was sort of taking